Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coach's Corner. Welcome to Coach's Corner. This is going to be a good one. They're all good ones. It's always a blessing and, such an experience hosting Coach's Corner with my amazing peers here. And we're going to dive into another powerful yet important topic that probably make you a little bit uncomfortable. And your perception on it may be what mine was. So we'll dive in. That's a little teaser there. Without further ado, my name is Jamel Matias. I'm a certified mindset success coach / business consultant, founder of Believe in the Unseen Consulting. I'm located in the Maryland area, and my purpose is to reveal the hidden potential that's already within you and guide you to your truest desires, whatever that may be. I help hardworking but unfulfilled professionals who know they're capable of more, yet they feel stuck in a cycle of effort without progress, lacking clarity or direction, and the positive mental programming needed to create the income, freedom, and life they truly desire. So I'm super excited to help you, and lighten your weekend. And I'll pass it on to my awesome colleague, Lou.
Oh, well, thank you, Jamel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or catching the replay. My name is Lou Perica. I am also a success mindset mentor and speaker and founder of Prosperous Results. And I work with growth minded women who feel like there's just more for them, whether that's more success, more fulfillment, or more alignment in their life, but something just isn't fully clicking. And a lot of the women that I speak with are doing all the right things on the outside, but they're still not experiencing the results that they desire. And that can leave anyone feeling frustrated or confused. And what I do is I help them understand what's actually driving their current results and how their thoughts, their feelings, their interpretations, and their patterns are influencing everything. And once they start to see that, things start to shift in a very real and lasting way. And I'm looking forward to this particular discussion today from You². But right now, I will pass it over to my friend Paul.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Jamel. And good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're watching from, or if you're watching the replay, as Lou said. My name is Paul Wooters. I'm also a success mindset mentor and coach, mentored by the late, great, legendary Bob Proctor, as we all were. And I'm also the head of the Leadership and Development Department at the World Life Education Center and High School in Oakville. I'm an author, speaker, and wow, like how did all that happen? It happened by applying the principles that we talk about here every week. It's not that this isn't just a book club. We're discussing material from a book, from books, different books and different principles that we studied. And so I help people, I don't just help people change what they do. I help them become who they need to be so that success becomes natural. I help them turn their internal vision into external results by transforming how they see themselves. And as I like to say, help them live to their greatest possibilities. Jamel.
Amazing. Awesome. Awesome. So I see a couple people here live. Thanks for joining us here live. Hello. Hello. What's going on? Hello, Melinda. Hi. I got a long username there. Hi. Thanks for joining us. Wow. Great to see you. Great to see you. So for all those who are here live, welcome. Dive into the show with us. Feel free to engage. Ask some questions. We're human beings. We love answering questions. We're just here to serve you, and help you see things a little differently within yourself. And as I always like to say, the outside is a reflection of the inside, and your mind is your sacred treasure, and to have this type of knowledge and material, not a day goes by that I'm not grateful, because it's shifted my life and how I see things and how I can help others, improve any area of their lives, whether it's more time freedom, whatever it is that you desire. And it's funny how desire is connected to today's topic. So like my colleague Lou mentioned, we are going through every chapter, a very powerful book by Price Pritchard called You². And, this is not just about knowledge, right? You can have all the knowledge, all the books in the world with, inferior results that you don't want, right? You desire more, and you always want to experience more in life and more in general. And that's the essence of who you are. It wants to experience itself at its highest degree within this small time frame that we have on this planet, in this body, right? So this is necessary. And before I dive in, don't let this just be another coach's corner or just get temporarily motivated or inspired. Reach out to one of us if you're serious about your future and you're serious about what you really want to create in your life, because life is so short. And I was just watching that video. I sent it to a few people. Bob, he has the hourglass, right? He says, this is the past. You can't change the past. He said, here's the future. You have no idea how much time you have, not to scare you, but to scare you, right? And what do you do here? This is the present, right? All you have is now. So don't let this go in one ear and out the other. Get motivated. Reach out to one of us. We're here to help. Not just to make you laugh and entertain you with amazing stories, but we're here to help you. Okay? So seek this and you shall find. That's what I titled this, because what do you want to find? You're actually finding yourself. You're finding your higher self. But it says, seek failure. Quantum leaps demand a willingness to make mistakes. Did anybody make any mistakes here? Am I the only one? Oh,
You're the only one.
Right. Let's count the mistakes we made, right? So it's funny because you must have a willingness to make mistakes. You must be open to making mistakes. So it's like, it's right, Al. You learn from mistakes. And it's interesting. You're that course correction. When we flew to Japan, Bob always used this example. He said the pilots can just leave the cockpit and walk back and have a drink and food with all the guests there, right? But the plane can run on autopilot, so it course corrects all the way there pretty much by itself. So when you're making these mistakes, guess what you're doing? You're working with the universe, right? And sometimes logically you're like, oh, that did not work. I failed. But no, once you learn from it, you're course correcting, even on a metaphysical, spiritual level as well, not just logical. But be willing to. If you're not willing to make a mistake, you're going to stay stuck, right? That we're using streaming software, right? So, and multiple platforms. So imagine the mistakes we had in the beginning, right? Sound probably wasn't right. We didn't have sound effects. Right? We had this intro that sometimes Facebook will pull our video down a couple times. Make sure our lighting is right? Make sure our hair is awesome. Speaking of hair, so, these are things we course corrected. We're willing to make these mistakes, right? We're living examples of this material. We don't just teach it, we live it. So I'll stop there.
I'll jump in. So the first sentence, quantum leaps demand a willingness to make mistakes. And I just wanted to share something because I think this has an enormous impact on everyone. and I decided to change my wording. And instead of the word mistakes or, um, I've done things wrong or regret, I simply refer to them now as experiences. And since making that shift, especially mentally, so I'm mindful of saying the word mistake or using it, using the word experience in lieu of the word mistake. But mentally, because how we define things gives us the experience. So again, what he's saying is the willingness to make mistakes is really the willingness to experience something. And many times it's, again, how we're interpreting something. So if we're feeling discomfort, right? Sometimes we think, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. This really doesn't feel good. But maybe that message is just saying to us, we've never done this before. That's why I feel uncomfortable. So I think the word, I'm going to just go back to using the word mistake, um, and trying to replace it with experience. That in itself feels like I've given myself a free pass out of jail card, right? Like I'm not having mistakes and making mistakes. What I'm doing is experiencing things. When I try something, when I do something and I get a result, then I can look at that result and then have a choice and make a decision from that result. But it's not a mistake, in my opinion, in my vocabulary, but it's simply an experience and a result which gives me the opportunity now to look at something differently instead of beating myself up. The other word and I don't want to get into the words, but like problems, if I use the word problem, to me, that has a heavy feeling to it. Um, Using the word perhaps challenge or opportunity or invitation for me has just a lighter feeling. And don't feel like it's coming at me, but asking me, come try this. So I just wanted to point that out. But again, how we define things is how we're going to experience something. So I just wanted to clear that for myself, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. I want to go back to something Jamel said right at the beginning. He said, "Who here has made a mistake, or who hasn't ever made a mistake?" And if you think of every great success story, think of a biography of someone, or think of someone you know, or think of some great success story, some guy, some individual, some woman who had great success. That story includes mistakes and failures. Every story, every great success story includes some mistakes and failures. It's just success or failures are stepping stones. Failure is not the opposite of success, right? It's a part of the process of achieving success. Those are stepping stones to success. So I also coach divers, diving from platform, 1 meter, 3 meter, 5 meter, 7 meter, 10 meter platform diving. And no one comes as a diver, and they all have to go up and try something. And inevitably, they're going to make a mistake, and things like that, which no one wants to do. But I remember, or I will say to them, if you go up there, you never make a mistake, then you're not trying hard enough. You haven't put yourself out. And it's just like when Bob Proctor would tell us, if your goal doesn't excite you and scare you at the same time, it's not a big enough goal. If you know how to achieve your goal, it's not a big enough goal. So we are afraid of failure, but think of when, young children, young kids going out, or when you were a child going out and doing something with your friends, creating something, making forts, doing jumps with your bicycles or something like that. Think of how many times things might go wrong, or you might fall off, or things might fall down or break down or things like that. But just them creating, children building something, right? They make mistakes. They create the methodology as they go along through the process of building and making mistakes, through the process of trying and seeing the failure. But they are not a failure. My divers aren't failures because they tried something and it didn't work today. They're only a failure if they decide to quit. You only failed if you decide, okay, that's it. I'm walking away from it. But you're not, failures are stepping stone to success. It's the feedback. As Alvin said, you learn from your mistakes. If you don't learn from your mistakes, okay, that's a mistake, not learning from it. But the fact that you're trying something and you're allowing yourself to make a mistake, it's giving you the feedback. It's telling you, it's giving you a lot of information, and you often will learn more from that than if everything you try is successful every time you try it and you never make a mistake. You're probably not pushing your own boundaries and your own limits, and you're not stretching yourself enough to really find out, really discover who you can be and what you can do. So don't be afraid of making that mistake. People are too afraid of making the mistakes, and people will try to avoid failure at almost all costs, right? But you have to, if you really want to pursue like big changes, then you need to really look for opportunities where failure is possible. Because the idea, we're not talking about failing, carelessly, like doing it carelessly, but to stretch yourself beyond what you already know you can accomplish. And if you only go after goals that you know you can achieve, you're probably operating well within your existing capabilities and capacities and limits. Jamel.
That's really good. 'Cause I like how you put the outside is feedback. It'll give you feedback on, okay, I need to adjust this, or I need to approach it this way, or maybe I should try it this way. And at the end there, it refers to 3 different types of goals. A type are goals you already know how to do. B type are goals you think you can do, and C type are goals that you really, really want. Right? So when you're going for goals that you think you can do, there's no true inspiration there. And C-type goals are connected to the quantum leap because that's the true desire that you really want, not playing it small. And, when we talk about mistakes, I'm looking right at this tie here. I thought I'll use this as an example. For years, I did not know how to tie a tie. For years. I'm in my late 40s, and it took me almost 40 years to figure this out. Right? So, yeah, where's my sound effects? That's a good one. So it took almost 40 years, right? Well, it didn't take me 40 years to figure out how to tie a tie. But you get the point. Basically, my self-image also did not, want to learn how to tie a tie, right? So imagine me standing in a mirror, how many times I had to do that to figure out how to tie this version. There's different knots. Paul knows that, and I'm sure a lot of people know. So there's different knots. This is the Windsor, right? The simple Windsor. Yeah. So am I correct there, Paul? Windsor knot?
Yeah.
Okay. So once I finally learned it, now I can do it without looking in the mirror. I can, I don't need light, right? So it took me to get out of my comfort zone, for one, to learn how to do it and have the belief that I can do it, right? Because I saw, everybody ties, not everybody, but a lot of people tie. So, and then I had to physically do it, right? So here's me failing over and over again, making the weirdest knots you can think of, right? It doesn't look like a tie. And I did this in like 20 seconds or less, right? So this is a clear example. And I'm feeling like Alicia right now because I had another example. Shout out to Alicia.
You got a prompt?
When we went to our trip to Japan, I learned this art where you take the brush and you make certain marks. I forgot the term, what this is called. Forgive me for anybody watching. What was that, Paul?
Calligraphy.
Yeah, calligraphy. They have another word for it, a Japanese word. But you learn this art by certain flicks of the brush. So you can do like a up or a down, and it's all like one movement per line, right? And this actually means feelings. I chose this one.
Hmm.
So imagine the mistakes I had. This is the finished product. Learning this art within an hour. All right, we had 2 hours there. Shout out to my wife. It was such a great idea, and her best friend as well. So I'm learning something totally out of my comfort zone, and I'm willing to make mistakes. Now, I know these are small examples, but it still helps you kind of understand the importance of making mistakes. And this chapter, it just speaks to you. He says, you must realize that if you're experiencing no difficulties, problems, or pain, you probably have aimed too low. And this is what we're talking about as far as the goals that you desire. He said, you've leveled off in your growth and achievement. Like how many people you know in your life that just leveled off in their own growth? They'll think about something, they just won't do it, right? You probably are far from reaching your limits. And we have no limits except for the limits we place on ourselves in our own mind. So he says, so think of problems or pain or slippage in performance as a positive sign. Now here's perception, right? A performance lag ordinarily occurs at the very outset when you are making a quantum leap. See, this is perception. When you think you're failing or losing or not going, and he explains here, it's actually part of the process. So it's the pause during which you poise for the jump. I was about to say that. I didn't even know that was there. So the temporary loss of momentum that occurs in the process of changing gears, especially you've been doing something for a while and you've been refining it. Look at the Wright brothers. They refined the heck out of those planes from bicycle parts. So they kept using these things and they were changing gears until that one day they flew. So, and how many mistakes did they make, right? Right? To the death. I believe 2 passed on accomplishing that dream. So failure is a resource, right? So essential. But I'll stop there.
So I know I've used this example many times in the past. And this is why, again, going back to day one of Coach's Corner about goals. And Jamel just mentioned the ABC goals. Paul also mentioned something that our mentor, Bob, would often say failing is only when you quit. So, as Earl Nightingale said, his quote is success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or idea. So I want to use the example. And this is why being emotionally connected to what it is that you want to experience is truly key, because last week we talked about the power of pursuit, because it's that emotional connection. That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want to experience. That's what I want to contribute to society. That's how I want to grow, blah, blah, blah. Right? So I want you to go back in the Wayback Machine when you came of age where you can get your driver's license. Okay? Now we've been under, at that time, you were under the supervision of your parents or some adults in your life. And the thought of getting your driver's license for me meant freedom. It meant independence. It meant I was growing up. So you have to go to, I think, driver's ed classes, you take your test, but maybe your friends, whether they have their license or not, or maybe they're a year younger or older, they want you to come out, go to the movies and whatnot. And you're like, no, I really have to study for my test. I have to take my permit test tomorrow and whatnot. Because you're so emotionally connected to having that driver's license, you were willing to maybe not go to the movies or not go to the mall with your friends. And then when it came to, you got your permit, you now were taking your driver's test for your license, there were some experiences, whether you call them mistakes or experiences, but perhaps, especially when it came to parallel parking, but maybe you stepped on the brake too hard. Maybe you misjudged your parking space. Maybe you forgot to check something, right? Like before we used to use keys back then. But before you put the key in, or before you put it into drive, and there were things that you had to check, but you were willing. And those, the times where maybe you did brake too hard or your parallel park, maybe you had to try a few times, you still kept doing it, kept doing it. They weren't considered mistakes or failures. You just kept going and going and going. And now you wouldn't, oh, back then you wouldn't have said, well, I'm not meant to drive. Maybe this isn't meant for me. You just kept doing it and kept doing it. And then finally you got your driver's license. But why is it when we become adults, somehow we expect to be competent enough in the moment as soon as we try something new? Like when we were younger, going for our driver's license, we kind of knew maybe things won't go as perfectly, but we knew in time we'll get the habit. Now people are texting, then women putting on makeup. Not that I condone that, but people become very comfortable. When you first were trying, there were all kinds of bumps and obstacles and challenges. But because you wanted that freedom, you wanted that independence, you wanted to soon maybe get your own car so you can do your own thing, you kept pursuing it. You kept pursuing it. And you didn't say to yourself, well, I guess I'm just not meant to drive. You just kept practicing and practicing. So I think that this was an example that most people can relate to. But again, when we become adults, there's something that we just think we should pick it up really quickly. But it's really the same process. It's just learning something new step by step. But the emotional connection to wanting that final result, that final experience will keep us in the game. Paul.
Thank you. I love that example, Lou. And I know that when you and I have spoken, that you've brought that up before, and that's
Yeah.
so true. Like when you really want something, you think of what you'll go through to get it, right? Failure is not avoidable. Everyone makes mistakes. Like everyone makes mistakes, and it's not. Failure isn't a single event. It's a process. Which involves choices, which involves responses and adjustments and learning. And it's so true. Like as adults, we're so scared of making a mistake. We're so scared of failing. We're so scared of, making a mistake in front of somebody else or someone else, or we beat ourselves up about it or something like that. So Lou, that's a great example of, when we learn how to drive. But go back even further. Think of a baby that's less than 2 years old taking the risks, and you see that baby coming across the floor, running and falling down. The baby, it's going to bump its elbow, maybe bump its head and things like that. But you tell that baby to get up and keep trying. And generally they do, unless they're seriously hurt, but generally they'll get up, they'll start walking, running again, falling down again, doing all those things. You don't pick up that baby and say, hey, you know what, you've fallen down too many times. I think walking's not for you. You go sit down. It's not in your future. You don't say that, right? You don't do that. So in this chapter, say seek failure. So why seek failure? Because it provides things that success, like, constant success doesn't. It gives us information and feedback. When an attempt doesn't produce the result that we want, what do we discover? We discover what doesn't work. We discover where maybe our assumptions were wrong, or what needs to change, and maybe what additional skill might be required so that we can get through this. So it's really good feedback. It's not a verdict on you or your ability. And this really connects back to like the earlier chapters in this book, like ignore conventional approaches or think beyond common sense. Wow. Suspend disbelief, right? Because we don't believe we can do these things. We're too afraid of making the mistake. It's that first step that often stops most people, right? But you got to focus on the end rather than the means, and you got to trust the unseen forces. I mean, those were all chapters that were covered in this book, and then you're inevitably going to venture into an area where you don't have certainty, and when you enter unfamiliar areas, some attempts just aren't going to work. So that failure isn't evidence that you shouldn't have tried, but it's evidence that you're operating outside your previous boundaries, the previous limitations that really we all create in our own minds, and so we generally kind of want to retreat and play it safe. Jamel.
That is so good. We create these boundaries in our own minds. And I saw a few comments here. I don't want to leave you hanging there. Hello, Sandy. Thanks for joining us. Say, OMG, serendipitous. I like that word. Coming across you guys. I've been poised. Yeah, being poised for way too long is the comfort zone, right? And the comfort zone, didn't they say that's the cousin of death, right? You're not growing. You're just sitting there, right? Just thinking about it, right? Not actually being. And you also had another comment here as well. This is related to what Paul just mentioned, right? I think as youth, we are fearless, endlessly optimistic, and took on life by the horns. As adults and aging adults, life outlook changes. We lose the fearlessness. Interesting, right? I think more, not only losing fearlessness, you can look at it another way. We chose fear, right? Mm-hmm. You're adding fear in your life, not losing fearlessness. It's the same thing, right? Just different ways of looking at it. So, like Paul mentioned, the only two things we're afraid of when we're born, we're natural born risk takers. We're born to take risks, right? And the only thing we fear is loud noises and the fear of falling, as babies, naturally. Some of us, I was there. I'm still a natural born risk taker, and I will forever be. And I know now logically and on a deep level how important that is to take a risk, because there is no quantum leap without getting out of that comfort zone. So I really wanted to just share that, because it's part of the process, the evolutionary process. When birds try to fly and they fall out of the nest and plop on the ground, they took a risk, right? They had to, otherwise they wouldn't survive, right? When I forgot which animal that can walk almost immediately can stand after it's born. I think horses, right?
Horses, maybe.
Yeah, and some other, I think goat as well. But they're taking risks. Their legs are all wobbly, and they stand like within minutes after they're born. Look at nature. It shows you what to do. It tells you. And the sad thing is, these fears that we allow, it's a mistaken identity. We're letting other people show us their fear, and we're internalizing it, and we're stagnant. We're stopping our growth. And what's even worse, we don't even imagine outside of this circumstance. We're not even imagining it, right? So what's really important is to really, really tap into what you want, what you truly desire, because that will, when you internalize something, a dream, what you really want. This is why Bob kept saying, what do you want? What do you really want? Right? He'll look at you and put all the energy he can in that statement. And it's so true. So when you realize what you really, really want, seeking failure will be a natural process for you. Right? You internalize, and it's in your subconscious, and then you're vibrating this frequency of what you desire, and you don't care if you're making mistakes. It's a necessary process. And he says something so good here. He says, you deliberately destabilize yourself when you break out of the habit patterns that represent the status quo. You're deliberately destabilizing yourself, right? Breaking out of those habits that represent the status quo. The opposite of confidence is, oh, I'm messing up here.
Conformity.
The opposite, yeah. How's it go, Lou? Help me out here.
The opposite of courage is not fear, it's conformity, or something like, yeah, it's conformity.
Yeah, the opposite of, he said something about cowardice, right? Well, anyway,
The
it's
opposite
conformity.
of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity.
There it is. Yeah, use the word cowardice. Yeah. The opposite
Bring
of
it up
courage.
full
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. So the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. So what is that conformity? Right? You're conforming, you're following the follower. Where does that get you? Not where you really want to. Right? How many times have we done that? And then he says, you create some inner chaos for yourself. Ooh, well, I'm scared of that. Right? So be prepared for the possibility of confusion, anxiety, and failure. That's part of opening yourself up to new methodology that has the potential to deliver exponential performance gains. So think of like a reptile or something, right? It sheds its old skin, right? Snakes, they have to get rid of that, lizard or gecko and all that, right? So they become anew. And imagine you're just sitting there with your old skin as a lizard, and just, you ever seen where the lizard hasn't shed its skin and it's like old skin just sitting on its face? It just looks crazy. Right? So are you that lizard, right? That's just sitting there thinking about shedding, right? So I know it's very visual, but the point is you have to, and there's calm in the storm too. That's where your awareness is so high, where you can sit in the middle of a poised moment and know where you're going. Calmness of mind, right? Order of the mind, and having a vision and knowing what you're doing. So this is why it's so important. You know, so often in life, it seems things first get worse on the way toward getting better. That's the law of rhythm. We talked about that. The ocean ebbs and flows. Seasons follow each other. Night follows day, right? It's so much in here that you can find. And, you know, you don't want to conform, trust me. That's disintegration, and you won't achieve what you want. You won't grow. And you look back in your life with regret, unfortunately. Most people look back, oh yeah, back in my day, I wish I would have did that. Hmm. This is your ticket, right? This is your moment. And what do you do with it? Can I give myself one?
Give yourself an
Thank
applause.
you.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Couple of things I just. Oh, were you finished? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm finished. Go ahead.
No, I shouldn't say finish. You're ready to pass it on. Okay.
Are you finished, Jamel?
So a couple of things I wanted to address. So you just read that line. You deliberately destabilize yourself when you break out of the habit of patterns that represent the status quo. So I understood the statement. However, I wanted to highlight the word destabilize. So I got the definition, and it says to make something shaky, weak, or unsafe so it loses power, control, or balance, turns a steady system into an unsteady system. Think about that. So I wanted to couple of other things. Again, how I shift words. Instead of failure, it's a result. And I wanted to address what Sandy had said. I think as youth that we were fearless, endlessly optimistic, and look at life by the
It's honest.
horns. As adults and aging adults, life outlook changes and we lose the fearlessness. So, and we all do this. I want you to think of the very first two words that Sandy used, and we all do it. I think, I feel, I believe, right? So right there is describing our belief system, our paradigm, right? So and again, as we get older, so when we're younger, Sandy, we're not hearing as much judgment or experiencing as much judgment, how other people's opinions affect us. As we get older, we're hearing it more and more. The opinions of others, whether we're reading it in a newspaper or hearing it on the radio or TV or social media, we're hearing more and more people's opinions. And that's in a sense judgment, and we don't like to be judged. So we like to play it just status quo, just want to play it safe. I remember when I was getting into real estate, they would have these conventions and whatnot, and I always wanted to sit at the back of the room. When I went to Mass, I wanted to sit in the back of the church. Whenever I had to go somewhere, I wanted to be in the back because I didn't want to bring what I thought attention to myself, right? I just wanted to kind of just blend in with everybody, not stand out. And since I've been studying self leadership, teaching it, etc., I've learned there's so much difference in experience when I sit up in the front. I remember I was being coached, and when you were coached, you got a special pass or a ticket to sit up in the front of the room. And there was a completely different experience and energy when I was up front, and I felt that I wanted to participate. I felt that I really wanted to hear and listen more intently to whatever the speaker was saying, opposed to sitting in the back. I was more distracted. I would look around and see, oh, what are they doing? Because I was that much further away from the speaker. So my mind wasn't right there up front. So I think again, right? I think this is my belief, um, that as we get older, we take others' opinions, and we create this fear of being judged. But again, And again, failure is, oh, well, failure, I call a result. Failure is just feedback. It's not our identity.
Mhm.
Like there's an enormous difference between the two. It's a result. That result again gives us a choice. Well, if I keep doing it the same way, most likely the probability is I'll get the same result. So there is a choice. Here's the result. What do you want to do with it? The ball is in our court. Here's a result. What do you want to do? Well, maybe I'll try something different. Perfect. Go for it. Then you'll get another result. So just like with Thomas Edison, he didn't say, you know, that result, I'm a failure because I didn't get the result I wanted. And it's been said 10,000 times. I don't know how much truth or exaggeration, maybe it is, I don't know. But in those 10,000 attempts, he got a result, but he didn't make that result his identity. Oh, I'm a failure. He asked himself, what am I learning from it? And I think he was, again, I don't know if it's really a quote, but he learned 9,900 or 10,000 different results that he didn't want, right? So that was that. Again, it's not your identity, it's simply a result. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say that, failure is not, part of your identity. It's not a stigma. A mistake doesn't have to become part of your identity. It's not, failure is not the enemy. Adversity can become this catalyst for growth and innovation and new ideas. It's not necessarily objective because what one person calls failure can simply be an experience that provides, like we were talking about, valuable information and feedback. So we do as adults generally play it safe. And again, it's not about being careless or reckless. When you think about playing it safe, you take one approach, that's choose something you can accomplish. You succeed, great, but your capabilities haven't changed very much. And I get that with kids who come to diving. They get very comfortable with certain things. They're comfortable, they're not getting hurt, they're not smacking, they're not laying on their back, and this is good. They don't feel embarrassed, and they kind of stay there. And there's somebody else, another individual, who will choose to stretch themselves by doing something new, and they're not going to get it the first time, and they're going to kind of brush it off and laugh it off, and because now the attempt forces them to learn, force them to adapt, to become more resourceful, and they try again. I had this just last week. Like there was a diver who was just got really comfortable. No, I really don't want to try that. I'm comfortable doing this. They didn't really want to push themselves. And another person says, okay, I can't see it. How do I do that, Paul? How do I do this? And, they just kept working on the skill until they got it. And so that was, huge success. And that's how they're going to make, it's not the other person couldn't do it. The other person decided they weren't going to do it. So there's a really important shift and as Lou was talking about identity. So, I didn't succeed at doing so, I'm a failure. Well, no, the approach that I took didn't produce the results I wanted. So, and that's a really important distinction because that protects your self-image, but it's still at the same time, it's allowing you to learn from your experience. You don't have to make failure part of your identity. You make learning a part of your identity. Failure is not final. What matters is what you do with the experience, and failure isn't permanent. It can just redirect you into progress and things like that. So, if you realize that, this chapter really encourages an experimental mindset, I guess. So instead of thinking, okay, I have to get this right, think instead, well, let's find out what happens. Again, not carelessly, but that gives you, or creates a freedom to experiment, to adjust, to try again, and that reduces a fear that prevents individuals from taking really meaningful action in the first place. So if a goal is merely a slightly improved version of your current self or your current performance, it doesn't require a fundamental change in thinking. But when the goal really stretches your current self-image, then failure becomes a possible part of the journey, and it's a stepping stone to success. So the question then becomes not, can I guarantee success? No, it becomes, am I willing to learn whatever I need to learn to give myself a genuine chance at this? So don't make avoiding failure your goal. Make discovering what you're capable of your goal. Jamel.
Yeah, that's really good. So amazing. There's, it brings to mind Earl Nightingale's definition of success again, right? The progressively, a worthy ideal. You're progressively moving towards a worthy ideal, right? And what is worthy to you? What is that goal? And you're so-called failing your way to success. And there's a different way of looking at it. Is your every step is a success because you're moving closer to that destination. So you're succeeding in every failure, right? And this is kind of what he's talking about. And don't see it as a failure. A lot of people need to switch their perception on what failure is. Like we said earlier, you're not a failure until you just stop, you quit, right? And being that you're still maybe even trying to do something in your life or trying to achieve something, you're still moving towards it, right? So there's a lot shared here that I really want to mention. He says, as someone has said, everything looks like a failure in the middle. You can't bake a cake without getting the kitchen messy. Halfway through surgery, it looks like there's been a murder in the room, right? So if you send a rocket toward the moon, about 90% of the time it's off course. It fails. So it fails its way to the moon by continually making mistakes and correcting them. So that's life, right? But you're not truly living if you're not making any mistakes, playing it safe. There's a paradigm, right? Oh, you got to play it safe, right? And Bob shares a beautiful story, Bob Proctor, about his grandmother. She's like, Grandma was wrong. Grandma was totally wrong. We loved her. She's a dear angel, but Grandma was wrong. You should never play it safe. You're either creating or you're disintegrating, right? And sometimes we're creating the same problems over and over, right? Ooh, now I'm touching something. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting these type of relationships or stuck at this income or whatever? You're creating all of it, probably because you're not taking a risk. And then he goes on to say, it's easy to lose faith. This resonated with me because other people may withdraw their support and be critical of your efforts. Wow. So you can't share a big picture with those with limited vision. So this is your journey. It's very unique. And not everyone's going to support you, especially when you're going after something you really wanted. And it said that plus your own anxieties and uncertainties can tempt you to turn on yourself. We're the only problem and the only solution.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's so powerful. So now you have the outside world, maybe family, business associates, etc., right? Withdrawing their support, and you're losing this faith. And then you have your anxieties and uncertainties turning on you. So you have all this opposition. This is the crucial point in the process. Don't give up. Failure belongs here. That's my favorite part. Failure belongs here. It's a sign of progress. This is why perception's a higher faculty. How you see this. And then he goes on, the stress will seduce you toward retreat to the safety of the status quo. It's like that Groundhog Day. He comes out, sees the shadow, and he goes right back in, right? Well, we got more winter. I don't know if they do that in Canada, Paul. They do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the groundhog, right? So the stress will seduce you toward retreat to the safety of the status quo, the trap of the familiar. 90% of people, maybe more, want to stay familiar. They're scared to step out of there because of what other people think. I was like that. You know, I come from different environments. What is Jamel talking about? He cut his hair. He's wearing a tie. He's talking about universal laws and personal development. This guy's different. Yeah, I'll continue to grow, right? So, and it says, just remember this. Failure does not mean you're defeated, right? We said that enough. And actually, the struggle gives you strength. Huh. It's like tempering the steel or the soreness involved in developing muscle. You know, here's another Japan story. When we got to use the katanas at the dojo with the samurai, we talked about how the swords were made. They kept refining the steel, folding it over and over to make it really strong, to be able to cut through a wall or anything, a car. It's very, very thick steel, folded on each other multiple times. And some had to have licenses and certifications to even make that sword, that type of sword. So it's a process, right? So your failure is preparing you. It's molding you into whatever you have to become to achieve that goal. It's so powerful. So he says the difficulties are just evidence that you're learning and progressing. So go looking for failure. Go looking for failure. Go out and fail and then use it, right? Don't interpret problems or breakdowns as proof that you should quit. I can do a whole post about that. Don't interpret problems or breakdowns as proof that you should quit, but instead take them as evidence of your growth and improvement. This is why perception is so important. Failure is a resource. It helps you find the edge of your capacities. Wow. I know I read pretty much half the chapter, but you know, it's just so necessary because I didn't have this. I didn't have accountability. I was just in the dark. And I'm glad I'm on the other side and opened up to mentorship because it's changed my life. And I know somebody's watching needs help. So, any closing remarks?
No,
Jamel, that was good.
awesome.
That was so good. I can give you an applause for that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Here we go. Anybody wanted to share anything or got anything going on?
Thank you. Yeah, I jumped in there. Sure. You know, just to underscore a bit of what Jamel was saying there, you know, generally the definition of failure is, you know, I didn't achieve the result I wanted, I failed. But, you know, you can create like a new definition, and that is, you know, hey, look, I discovered something that can help me make a better attempt next time. And success can become less about reaching that final destination and more about continually moving forward, learning, adapting and growing and stretching yourself and really finding out what you are truly capable of doing and being. Lou.
I just wanted to reiterate, be mindful of the story you're telling yourself. Be aware of the words and the story that's going on in your head as you're pursuing whatever it is that you want to experience. That story is going to either help move you forward or keep you stuck. So be very mindful of that story. That's it for me.
It's been such a great session, and always a pleasure expressing this knowledge with my peers here. And like I said at the beginning, reach out to us, because application of this knowledge helps things change in your life and improve in your life. And accountability, right? Accountability is also very important, because we'll operate on what we always do, right? In that comfort zone. We'll do the same way over and over and expect different results. You have to be open to being guided. And not that we're almighty and have all this knowledge and everything figured out, but it's good to have this environment, because when you're around people that are growing and making things happen, it impacts you on a spiritual and mental and physical level, all three parts. So, and you're not in the dark like I was for so long, trying to figure things out the hard way. And I was so reluctant to mentorship. I really was. I was like, I can do this by myself, and that's just my story, right? And I know you have your story. And, talking to us, you're here now. And especially if you've been watching multiple sessions every Sunday for the last 2 years, us. Feel free to reach out to anyone that you resonate with. I'm not offended. You can, Paul, Lou, Alicia, whoever you connect with, right? Because this journey is so precious. And if you're not growing and you're stuck in this comfort zone and not facing these fears and making mistakes, right? I have to quote that, because mistake is actually guidance. It really is. And it wasn't a mistake. You attracted this very moment listening to us. Your spirit is ready for this truth. But what do you do with it? That's your choice. You have the power to choose. Go back to what you've been doing. Good luck, right? Or choose to have one of the best conversations you could ever have in your life. No obligation phone call. So our links are in the description or the comments, or just reach out to us, whatever platform you're on. Much love, many blessings, and much success, everybody. This has been an awesome Coach's Corner, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.